Market insights to global financial news you need to know. From Wall Street to the main street and, of course, the marketplace. Get the answers you need every week on Business Lens with me, Faith Dafford Joseph, as I bring into focus the stories, strategies, and shifts shaping our economy. No angle is missed as I talk about the business, the people, patterns, and possibilities behind them. Welcome to the Business Lens.
Rapid TV, rooted in truths, driven by impact.
And welcome to Business Lens on Rapid TV. My name is Faith Dafford Joseph. And per usual, we get to do Monday and Thursdays to let you know what is going on in the markets, get to let you know what is going on with financial economic news. And we get to unpack all of this with our seasoned analysts in the studio. Okay? So there are enough headlines to go through today. Nigeria's inflation figures were released again by the MBS. It has, of course, also triggered conversations and triggered a lot of controversial comments where that is concerned. And I'm going to be unpacking that, like I said, with my guests in the studio. Okay, so let me turn to my guests. I have in the studio joining me Daniel Effa. He is our financial global market analyst. Okay, and I also have Mr. Abiola, our economist from Key2 Markets. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Faith. Good to be here.
Good morning, Faith.
Okay, so you're seeing the inflation figures. According to the MBS, it has dropped, I think, 21%, 0.9% thereabouts. So let's talk about that, because what that shows is that inflation is slowing down. There are some people who are categorizing it as disinflation. That's basically where Nigeria is right now. But these numbers, when you look at it, they look like, okay, yes, we are stabilizing the economy, inflation is slowing down. But does it also fit the reality of what people are dealing with? Because if you look at your comments, I mean, there was a particular one, I think it was Nairametrics, where you had Nigeria saying that statistics will go chop. You know, what do you mean by this? So let me get your take on the inflation numbers first. Were you surprised? Was it expected?
So I think for me personally, I was not surprised, considering the fact that we've identified a trend for the past, I think, 4 months now of consistent disinflation. What is very key for me in the old data is, okay, what is our month-to-month figures, which is still rising, but not at the pace it was before. Even though for last month it was about maybe 1.9 month over month, food inflation is still high, right? Even though that also did reduce a bit, right? So overall, it is just what people should really understand about inflationary figures is that the word inflation itself already means price increase, right? So what we're just measuring is how consistent this price is increasing. So look at it from this perspective. If it's from the year-over-year conversation, which is around 21.88%, what it simply means in basic terms is that prices at this time last year, the average prices of goods are about 20% or 21% increase. That is basically what it means. Okay, so to understand, so it is not like prices are going down according to the way we talk about the figures, right? Because then 22.2 something to 21.88 looks like, yes, the year-over-year figure is going down. But in the real sense, what it actually means is that there is still inflation, but it is not moving at the pace at which it was moving previously. And that is basically how it should be interpreted. Of course, we understand that from the policy point of view, we are like, oh, it is stabilizing, we are doing something right. But when you look at the prices in the market, it is still reflecting that, yeah, prices are still increasing. For example, essentials are still going up, right? So when you look at the components, break down the components, you realize that, yes, we still have these high figures. Prices are still high, but not at the pace at which it was doing that like a year ago, for example.
Well, I support Daniel for once. I also feel that inflation cannot continue to increase at the rate it was last year, and let's even say a year before. As at now, it is expected that it should have reduced, okay, but even much more than that, okay, because in layman terms, what it means is that, let's assume that a bag of gari was 50,000, and due to inflation, it went all the way to 80,000. Now, we don't expect it to keep rising to 110, to 150, but the price and the reality is that it is still at 80,000.
Yes.
And the reality of the income of an average Nigerian has not caught up to that 80,000.
Yes.
So even though inflation is slowing down, which is a good thing, but when do we now start talking about a sort of a reversal, okay, for prices to actually stop going up and now start coming down gradually? Because what we have now is not affordable for a lot of people. People spend more than 100% of their family income, household income, on food alone. And with what I'm saying, inflation is a fantastic thing, but we need to go a bit ahead of it and slow it down completely to a point where we start having reversal and dropping in prices.
I think that's really the most important conversation, because ideally what you should do is if you increase household income, right, increase wages, for example, people are then meant to are able to then afford these things, which in some way might increase money circulation, might still push up inflation. But the other way is to actually attack whatever is the cause of the price increase in the first place and bring the prices deliberately down. That way, what you are trying to do then is not just the figures of inflation. We are also trying to make people's life better, because inflation, one way or the other, affects their daily living.
I mean, let's talk about food inflation, So that also seems to have slowed down a bit, this month as well. Well, it's not as high as it was last month. It really went up, so it feels like it has gone down just a little with this particular report. But what you also see when the MBS is talking about inflation figures is that they get to tell us about the things that contributed to it, and food and beverages are always contributing. And that is also looking at the fact that the basket was divided, the food basket, when they're talking about, well, if you want to use that word, restaurants and things like that were included. But you see that food is still a big factor.
Always.
I think any economy, food is usually the big factor. So
the major factor.
The only problem with Nigeria is because we really don't control the food system. Our entire food ecosystem is not fully in reach of Nigerian policymakers. That is the problem we are having. So we are only dependent largely on whatever the naira to dollar says. In fact, that is a major determining factor for whatever pricing is in Nigeria than even whatever we produce locally. So that is the problem. As soon as we're able to solve that issue, where we can say this year our goal is 2 million tons of product, we will start being able to get ahead of that curve and control the conversation. So that's the difference between an advanced country and us, because then they have the capacity, they have the storage capacity, they have all the value chain, they can control the flow. So if you're saying we don't want food inflation to be at more than 5% in 2024, that is the target. That's what they're going to do.
Very, very possible. And they have inputs, okay, to this particular value chain. For example, in Western countries, the government can actually determine the amount of subsidy they want to put on fertilizer, for example. And they know that this input directly, flows through the value chain, because the value chain is under control. But for here, even if we say we want to discount fertilizer, distribution and implementation alone might render it ineffective. So I agree with what you're saying. Food has to go beyond just farmers being on the farm. We need to have a control over how much food we are producing and the distribution network, is it actually working or not? And once we know that, okay, we have a lockdown on the whole process, the whole value chain, then it is easy to introduce inputs and see the effect immediately.
Well, we're going to move on from the issue of inflation right now. We're going to now get to the next headline, and that's talking about Nigeria's debt to IDA. We know that the IDA is typically the concessional arm of the World Bank.
Yeah.
They give low interest rates, they give a long maturity date, and grace periods as well for you to be able to do this. I think the first time we got a story about the IDA was in 2023 when Nigeria climbed to, I think, the third largest place in 2024. And has maintained that position up until now. So what we now know that Nigeria has retained its position. It's not a good thing, but yes, as the third largest debtor to the World Bank's International Development Association. We have an outstanding obligation of $18.2 billion as of June 30, 2025. That is a very sharp rise from $16.5 billion in June 2024. That means that we've added about $1.7 billion more in a year. Okay, so let's talk about that. One of the things that people argue about is that yes, we need to grow the economy, we need to fund projects, so we need to borrow money. Everybody borrows money, but
1.7 is a lot in Nigeria. We're talking about trillions of naira, and like I keep saying, the issue for me is not the debt. Okay, the issue for me is how is this being utilized? Because at the end of the day, if it's not being utilized in such a way that the GDP will grow, that an average Nigerian will have an increase of income, increase in value, then paying back this debt might actually become an issue in the future. So that has always been my own headache, that we keep adding on debt, which for me, is not the problem. The problem, what exactly are we using it for? Are we using it for things that would actually increase the productivity of Nigeria, increase our industrialization, so that we can actually say, okay, we're pumping out more stuff, revenue has increased. It is easy in the future to be able to say, okay, let's start paying off. Even before, if you remember during Obasanjo's time, there was a time that he went back for forgiveness on debt, paid back. He tried his best to nail the debt issue as much as possible, because at some point in time, when the debt becomes so much, or if the debt becomes so much and you are trapped in a debt cycle, it becomes hard for even productivity to rise up, because what now is available to you are loans at a higher interest rate. The normal ones are no more there because you are not servicing them and you are not able to pay them back.
But we're very good at servicing debts, aren't we? I mean, we're good with that.
So I think for me, the key issue here, apart from the fact that for each of these loans, we see a lot of high consultancy fees that third party issues that are there, is the fact that a lot of these issues, these loans are tied to, right, are socioeconomic issues that we've not clearly defined how we track its performance. So if you're saying tackling poverty by sending children to school, you've seen by providing infrastructure in rural communities, so many of those loans are tied to such developmental projects, and you need to wonder, what is the scorecard on those projects? Because there are two, a lot of them are too vague. In fact, some of these loans are given with conditions to doing some certain kind of reforms. You get. So my question is the World Bank monitoring the efficiency of this loan? Because if they are called IDs and the practical developmental loans, they are not infrastructural loans. Most of them are developmental loans. For example, the one that was given during the COVID, the $800 million during the subsidy removal period. What is what is success of those loans? Were it successful? Because it's the cash transfer that was meant to be successful.
I was reading a headline over there last week about 44 billion someone arrested over this particular cash transfer stuff and poverty allegations stuff.
So those are
that's the feedback.
Exactly. Those are the real issues that we begin to wonder, why do we keep going there? Because then even for the World Bank as an organization, it is important that some of these loans because it is initiated by both the Nigerian government and the World Bank, because the World Bank was also believe in the project that is coming on to fund it, right? So even for test run, even for subsequent countries that might come up with such policies, is it a win? For example, now we did the N-Power program then, cash transfer, market money, traders money. This was already done in South America. We basically copied and pasted. Did it work here? Because then, if it worked, something that can be replicated. If it didn't work, why didn't it work? And why if another country comes in the future and says we want to collect something similar, should it be given? Those are the things Those are the things that is key for the kind of loans that comes out from the world.
I don't feel that for Africa at this stage. I think that to a very large extent, loans should not just be given out for loan's sake in terms of cash. I feel that if you look at the train stations, for example, the new ones that were, Kaduna, Abuja, Lagos, and all that, some of them, or if not all of them, were built on loans. But you see that they actually came to implement this. So I think I prefer that kind of strategy because nobody can say in the world that they are blind to the corruption that sometimes goes on in some countries. So if based on data, if at all we use data, based on data and feedback, you see that, okay, we'll give 10 naira to this country, and at the end of the day, they don't even utilize 2 naira for what it is meant for. So why would you continue going back to the same country, keep giving them 10 naira, 20 naira, 30 naira, knowing fully well that at the end of the day, based on data and feedback and what you have done in the past, that these monies might not be used for what it is proposed for. So why not just go direct and say, okay, if we're going to build a stadium, that's what the loan is for, then we're going to build a stadium.
So,
you can bring in your local people to build it.
Is that the difference between the Chinese concessionary loan and what you get from Western bodies like, the World Bank and maybe European, loan bodies as well? Because, in different countries, I've seen it play out. If China is coming in, they are coming in to build. They are being a part of it, right? These people just give monies, basically. And like you said, they know of the endemic corruption in African countries, but they give these monies and, well, you're going to pay back, so they don't really,
I think
they're not as invested.
As what you use it for. And that is a very bad thing, because then if your concern is, as long as they're going to pay me back, because if you check the vision of the ID, the World Bank's ID, it's actually for development, right? So if development is not, because development is different from infrastructure. Development is the whole conversation around even the welfare of the citizens. So if this is not achieving it, so why is it set up in the first place? If I'm saying something is meant to help people grow, right? And the people that are coming for these loans are practically not growing, but they're taking the loan and they're paying you back. Does that achieve the goal of the fund itself? So that's what we will be looking at the end of it. Because then, if you're saying we are the third largest, fantastic. It is not a bad thing that we are the third largest. It means that we need it more, because our population is growing astronomically. If you do, maybe almost 240 million now. Only God knows. But is these loans we've been taking for these purposes that are meant to improve the life of the people, are they solving the problem?
Let's look at what this administration, right, between 2023 and 2025, just to put the figures out there. Okay. This administration has borrowed $3.9 billion from IDA, right? That's just this administration. So between the time, this government came in 2023 up until June 2025, this is what we have, $3.9 billion. And then if you look at the economy and you look at infrastructure growth, in that period, can we really justify this amount?
Well, what I wanted to say is, based on what you said earlier, if I am just domesticating the whole thing, now, if I walk up to a bank and I say, give me this loan, and they give me the loan, and I am paying back, even though I use that loan for party, even though I use the loan to travel out, come back or go shopping, and at the end of the day, I'm paying back the loan. If I approach that bank again, are they going to give me another
It's
loan?
Good business. They'll give it to you.
Would. So I think it's also, if we remove the moral aspect,
yes,
it's just business.
So is it Nigerians that need to ask questions, not necessarily the World Bank itself? Because now I'm telling you, we have $3.9 billion that have been taken by this administration since it came on board in 2023 up until now. $3.9 billion. That's not cheap. That's trillions if you're converting it to naira. So at the end of the day, should Nigerians be the ones asking these questions? Okay, so you're taking this amount of loans, our debt stock is growing.
Yeah.
What have you done with it? Is this where the National Assembly steps in? Because in the World Bank, yes, you expect them to ask these questions. You feel like they are morally liable to ask these questions, but then they really don't owe you those questions. They can decide that they don't want to give it to you if you don't do these things. But the people who really should be asking these questions are Nigerians and the National Assembly. What are you doing with these loans? Our debt stock is growing.
Okay, so I think it's both parties. I think Nigerians should ask questions to their policymakers, and the World Bank's also meant to ask questions. Why am I saying this? Let me start with Nigerians. For example, now we've done over 3.9 billion, right? And the government has done different things, like a lot of different policies, talking of the student loans, talking of the cash transfers, talking of credit corp, so many NEL funds, so many of those things have come up, right? Which is ideally.
So is that where the monies are going?
Because a lot of them are social activities that most of those particular World Bank loans were attached for, right? Fantastic, and that is what I've been saying. It is not the issue has never been in setting up the fund, setting up the policy, about the implementation. Has it really gotten to the people? Has it achieved the desired aim of it being issued in the first place? Now, going back to the World Bank, the reason these funds that the World Bank has, they are limited funds. There are so many countries that come to demand for these funds, right? The idea of this fund is to improve the lives of people, right? If some of those, as was an example of the Empower program, for example, it was tested in a country and it worked, right? It improved the life of these people, and the economy became better, right? So it now made sense for whatever those funds were for, right? If a social fund, for example, from the Chinese, because either way, if the funds improve your country, it's expected that you actually are able to pay back realistically, right? So if you are paying back without necessarily achieving the funds, it means that you are putting a strain on your finances, and that is what we are now. A lot of the loans we've collected in the past did not achieve the desired aim. That is why we practically are doing almost 100% revenue to debt servicing, because that is what we are caught in that trap now. Yes, we are removing subsidies, people are suffering for it. We still keep trying, we still keep expanding it, and those loans are not still achieving what it is meant to achieve, because what those loans are meant to do is to improve the lives of your people so that they can become more productive and you can actually make more money. The ripple effect of it makes your economy bigger and better, and people are able to live better lives. So those things are not being achieved. Yes, you are paying back, but the essence of the loans is still not being achieved, which is what developmental loans are for. You can go to private people, private institutional firms to give you loans, right? But you are going to the World Bank because you are telling them, this is what I want to do to improve the life of my people. And if it is not being achieved, both the World Bank should be asking questions, and because they are the issuers of this loan, and also the people that these loans are meant to
and
get
in exchange, you get maybe a lower interest
exactly
rate.
Even more moratorium, more access to more.
And I think one of the things that is also attractive about these loans is the fact that you get this long grace period, you get lower interest rates, and then you just makes it really attractive because you have access to these monies.
And if you look at it in a way, at the end of the day, the citizens are still the one that will pay back the loan.
Well, of course.
So if you can take the loan, then at the end of the day, everybody will pay back the loan.
Everybody pays back the loan.
Actually,
I think a lot of Nigerians, that still hasn't registered that when government takes these loans, it's not you think, oh, they're going to pay it back. You're the one paying it back. That's why you have your high inflation. That's why you have cost of living going up. That's why you have high taxes coming up, because these loans will be paid and will be paid by you.
Even missed opportunities, for example, your life is meant to have been better by a certain amount, and it has not been better by that amount. It's a payment from you.
True.
Meaning that let's assume that your salary is meant to go to 500k from 300k, but you're still on 300k. That imaginary 200k that never came is part of the payment you're paying back, because that is what the loan is meant to do. For example,
and infrastructural development that is supposed to happen won't happen because exactly. So jobs are not created, the economy doesn't expand, food is more expensive. That's you paying those loans, in case you don't know. Just saying. Anyway, we're going to go on a very quick break. Rita, we need to talk about The WTO director was in Nigeria recently and had a closed-door meeting with the president, and then, she had this press briefing that's talking about Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and she was talking about how the economy has stabilized. That has triggered conversation. We have Nigerians saying, how are you saying that? Do you know what the reality of our lives is? And then you also now have, some people stepping in to explain that that's not exactly what it is. So on the other side of the hour, we get to talk about that. Stay here with us. Nigeria's economy, the global markets, what does it all mean for you? From stock market insights to global financial news you need to know. From Wall Street to the main street and, of course, the marketplace. Get the answers you need every week on Business Lens with me, Faith Dafa-Joseph, as I bring into focus the stories, strategies, and shifts shaping our economy. No angle is missed as I talk about the business, the people, patterns, and possibilities behind them. Welcome to the Business Lens.
Rapid TV, rooted in truth, driven by impact.
It's still the Business Lens on Rapid TV. And like I said, over the weekend, there were conversations triggered by the comments of the Director General of the WTO, that's the World Trade Organization, who visited Nigeria and had a closed-door meeting with the president. After that, she had this, press interview, and she talked about how this administration has stabilized the economy. Okay, one of the things she also said was that this administration also had to provide safety nets and then grow the economy. But a lot of people ran with the thoughts, with the words of this administration has stabilized the economy and the commendation that she said this president deserves for doing that. Okay, and so there are people who have, railed against it, saying, how did he stabilize the economy? What do you mean by stabilize the economy? And there have also people who have said, wait, let's explain what that means exactly. One of those people that has tried to explain it has been Dr. Yemi Kale. Okay, you remember him as a former MBS Statistician General, but right now, of course, he has moved on to, the Afrexim Bank, and he was trying to explain what exactly it means when you're talking about the economy stabilizing, saying that it does not necessarily mean that things have changed, does not necessarily mean that the hardship has disappeared, but you have some macro indices that are stabilized, talking about how you cannot predict some things. But there are people who are still not buying it. But let me come to let me come back to my analyst here, Daniel. So of course you probably read or watched Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's statement talking about stabilizing the economy. First, let's start with this. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I completely agree. Because the concept, the word stabilizing, it's an English word. There's no extra conversations to it. What does it mean for something to stabilize? That means there was turbulence, right? And the truth is that was there turbulence by the time this administration took over in 2023? Yes. In fact, just 3 months or 4 months before the administration took over, we had a Naira design that became a crisis. Just to give you an idea of how it was, we had Naira to dollar. We had about 5 or 6 different rates, right? We had petrol. We were at a point where there were imports of bad fuel, like you get in this country. You get it was a very terrible period.
Sorry, because don't forget digital economy, like the cashless.
Yeah.
That put on us then also that a lot of there were so many limits that banks networks were crashing.
Exactly.
Today there's so many transfers that never got to their destination and they would never return.
So it was a very chaotic period, right? It was a very chaotic period. Right before the pandemic, we started with the ban, right? With the ban, with the border closure, right? That goods were on the borders for weeks, right? Up until the pandemic came and it escalated. So there was chaos, and that is what she's trying to talk about. I think that we've talked about it here, right? Even on numerous occasions that, for example, I would usually commend the CBN for stabilizing the FX rate. Right? That is stabilization. There's no between stabilization and growth, but she's saying stabilization. And that is she's correct for saying that because everything points to that. However, when a lot of talk about economy comes up, people are just very direct about what the microeconomy is saying, what does the economy saying to my life, which is fantastic, right? But then, before you can make progress, at least create a form of stabilization first, and that is basically what. Now, what happens next is now left to the government administration and the policymakers to solve. But at this point in time, the structure needed, right, for that next phase is almost there. And that is basically what she's talking about.
Just like the foundation. If the foundation is shaky, if you don't have a platform that is stable, you cannot build anything on top of it. So I think that's what she's saying. If you're in an aircraft, you get to a point, the pilot to say, but now at a cruising altitude, you can remove your seatbelt, whatever. It does not mean that you are higher or lower. It just means that at this point in the plane, it is now stable enough for us to now start doing other things.
I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that Dr. Yemekale says was that this is a technical term that does not necessarily translate to immediate relief, but it is what it is. The economy is now stable. Like you talked about the exchange rates.
Exactly.
You can predict it, you know. You can say, okay, I know that it's going to be between 1,480 to 1,520. There is a window, right? You can predict it like that. You can say, okay, inflation will probably go down by maybe 1 point or go up maybe 1 point. You can predict that. So you can plan accordingly. What it means is that businesses are no longer at the risk of uncertainty.
To some extent. Yeah.
To a large extent right now.
Extent, yeah.
So that is what indicates that the economy is stable. Not that
They are
it
not
is
saying
growing.
it's better or growing or pandemic. No.
Because the thing is, no matter who it was at the helm of affairs, and that was I remember, was it in December 2023 when the CBN governor came, and one of the things that he said that we complained about was that he created more chaos by saying that the naira was underpriced, that it should have been 1,000 naira. And one of the things we said was that you cannot make that statement without having to lay down structure. This was the issue that the former CBN governor had, right? And for the following months, chaos left and right, naira getting to like 1.9. But by the time the structure started coming in, we now have an idea, just like you cited. We now have a range of where the stability should be, and that is what we are talking about, because structure usually creates stability, right? Effective structure will create stability. What would happen next? Of course, for Nigerians, what was the cost of this structure? And that is where the real concerns would be. And that is why she was citing that you cannot just leave them here now. You stabilize the economy, you have access to at least more liquidity, FPIs are coming in for you. The vulnerable people that have increased astronomically, you now need to create safety nets for them. I think that whatever she said was very clear. But of course, we will definitely find ways to look at it one way or the other, because then I don't blame Nigerians that say nothing has been done, this is bad, this is worse, because yes, it is actually worse, it is actually bad. And that is one of my issues with the way the structure was created, because it did not factor in the average Nigerians and the low-income Nigerians. It's just factored in, let us get this done, and just done. And because I for one will tell you that I prefer you give me some sort of subsidy on something which directly gets to me than you getting the money and the potential, or the potential of you implementing a policy infrastructure that will affect me is almost not there. So I will not trust you to use that money to better my life, but I prefer you giving me a soft landing in terms of the pricing I go to face on a day-to-day. And that's how Nigerians have been for a long time.
So you can say one of the things that there are economists that have argued that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So you can carry out your reforms and also try to make impacts in the lives of your people. Like you were saying, provide safety nets for people who are going through this hardship and now start to focus on growth. But then there is also the thought that, you know what, finish the first round, which is the reforms and the restructuring and the laying of the foundation, then move on to the next phase, which is now let the economy grow, let's create more jobs, let's provide safety nets. Or are you saying that they should have been done concurrently?
I won't prefer the number two should have been done first, because see, some people have lost their lives, if you research very well, due to whatever, and they are not here for the second part you're talking about. So the most important thing is to keep people alive to the point in which they can start enjoying whatever reforms is coming. Now, if you want the whole of Nigerians to actually, or Nigerians rather, to actually sacrifice, then the government should also show us that they are also sacrificing. Then everybody knows that, okay, we're sacrificing towards the same goal. But what an average Nigerian is seeing is that, okay, we are sacrificing. We are bearing the brunt of paying more for food, more for transport, more for power. At the end of the day, are our leaders, are they doing the same thing? Is the National Assembly taking a cut? Is the presidency taking a cut? If at the end of the day this is not there, even if it's just for optics, then an average guy on the street feels that, oh, I'm the one doing all the sacrifice for the company, for the country to go forward. So I would have preferred that even if all the subsidies could have were not in place at the beginning, even if just one or two, I always go to food. If you make food as cheap as anything, and an average household can spend 40% of their income on only food, then you will even have more purchasing power. Then the country will be a little bit stable for it to be able to implement some of those policies you want to implement. But in a situation where food has quadrupled, where
energy,
where energy, what's called the transportation, petrol. So exactly where is the sukkah going to come from for them to stay long enough to actually be alive to
for the second phase
policies? Yeah.
So because if you look at data critically, realize that over 100 people have been driven to poverty. And
100 million.
Over 100 million people. That's imagine in a country of our population, over 60% of people are considered poor, multidimensional poverty. Now, this is the problem with that, is that your consumption suddenly has tanked, right? So consumption tanks, that means that even your businesses would not be as profitable as they should be. Now, if they are not profitable as you should be, whatever you've done with your restructuring is meant to kick off immediately by ensuring that people get into large productivity. But imagine you have productivity and people cannot consume it. People don't have the capacity to consume it. So you still have a lot of businesses, even though interest rate is high. If consumption was as high, it would not matter, because businesses would be able to keep running, to keep being able to do their obligations. So one way or the other, you're not going to ask yourself, was it worth it? I've always asked the question, what is the end game of what we're doing? What is, at this point, to say, yes, this is what we were trying to achieve with this thing? Because then, if the essence of the core essence of government, of policy making, macroeconomy is for welfare of citizens, even though you're telling me this will end at my own profitability, but if at the short run I cannot survive the long run, there is a problem.
But let's talk about the fact that one of the things that usually happens, especially when macroeconomic indicators start stabilizing, is that the people who feel it first are investors and the big businesses, big corporations. If you look at the NGX, you can see that has done well most of the time of this administration, right?
So
and then hold on, wait. It has done well, right? Yeah. And then the idea is that we're going to have a trickle-down economy. So if businesses are making more money, we're seeing businesses, banks and maybe telcos, churning out a lot of profits. And we're seeing the NGX expanding. We're seeing other companies starting to join and list their companies. So if that is happening, it is expected that there should be a trickle down of that profit. You should have the trickle down effect of that in the economy, so that as you're making more money, you can hire more people, you can increase salaries, and then you now start to feel it in the economy. Is that happening for us? Because, there's always that question of the Main Street is suffering while Wall Street is thriving.
So, see, whatever we're seeing with the NGX is a more pointer, is a bigger pointer to the fact that the real sector is bad, right? Because when people trust the market, the perception-based market than the reality-based market, it is a problem. So that means if I have a billionaire, I prefer to go to the market than to set up a business inside the country.
But doesn't that happen first?
It doesn't happen first. It is actually what happens in the actual economy that translates into. So when you see people invest a lot in Apple stocks, in Alphabet, it's because Apple is expanding. Right here, what we are seeing is the other way around. It is because there is nowhere to put what is happening? The real sector, nothing. Which businesses are really doing well? If you look at the companies that are doing so well in terms of the stocks, right, you realize that they are owing massive debts. Because nothing is happening in the real sector. They are laying off staffs. So for me, it is just a glorified Ponzi in one way that people would go to.
So you're saying Nigeria's economy is a glorified Ponzi? It's a glorified. I didn't say Ponzi. I say a glorified because then what it simply means is that you prefer to take your money, right, that should provide jobs, take it to the market instead. Right, that is already a fault. So you're having investors avoiding the real
Nobody
sector
wants to bring in money
just
to your
focusing
sector.
on the market.
So how do you grow with perception money? Because you know why? This is what happens. If people get to a point, maybe they got into a stock to a certain point, maybe a share that was 20 naira per share, gets 100 naira per share, and they pull off, right? They pull out, that stock goes back. It keeps going back. That is how the market works.
It's a greater fool syndrome.
Exactly. That's how the market works. So it is not real. It is not real because if there's no real growth to back these things up, it's a problem. So we cannot use that as a pointer that we are doing well. Just like the way FPS are coming in with so much high interest, right? It is not a pointer that we're doing well yet. It is the FDI. Are people ready to bring in money to the country? That is the real conversation. So while you are happy that some market is doing over 20 trillion, 25 trillion addition in new year, fantastic. That people have seen where to put money, but it is not a pointer that your economy is doing well yet.
So look at the fact that she's saying, even Yemikala was saying it, that now that you are able to stabilize the economy, you can focus on the second phase. You are arguing that it should have been done concurrently, but now they've done it like this. So we should now be expecting this administration to focus on economic growth, to focus on safety nets, to focus on. Can we see that direction being moved towards?
For me, I've not been able to see that. I feel that a way to start for us is this recurring issue of power, which kind of has started being taken care of on a micro scale. Some states now started working independently on their own power stuff, and I feel that once power is done, the next thing to happen is to start having industrial clusters. I spoke about this I think last 2 years, and I was like, okay, if we cannot have stable electricity supply, across board, then we can have industrial clusters, let's say in the 6 geopolitical zone, and in those clusters you guarantee power. Then you woo investors, you woo industries, you woo manufacturers to come there, guaranteeing them safety, that is security, also guaranteeing them that power will be 110%. Then once you do that, you start stimulating the economy from that direction, number one. Secondly, in terms of subsidy, you might not need to put everything at once, but subsidy is a must. Almost in any country, there's a subsidy. Is either the subsidy on food, subsidy on transport?
They say we can afford it.
There's always a subsidy somewhere.
They say we can't afford it. We can't afford any sort of subsidy. That's what the government argues. I mean, right now we have a bit of subsidy on electricity for some people. The people who are in the bandi,
no, there's no subsidy
whatever.
on electricity. And I didn't understand bandi to say that they are there. When we were growing up, there was nothing like that. Just give us power. All this bandi and all that. There's no way you can really zone Nigeria and say that this area is more important and more productive than this area, because everything is scattered everywhere. There's no cluster that is, this is the business cluster. For example, in Abuja, everywhere is an office, everywhere is a residence. So how do you differentiate and say, this place is more important than this other?
I mean, if you're talking about clusters, Industrial Avenue in Ilukbeji was a business cluster. But if you go there now, it's totally empty. Everybody's gone. So I don't know how you want to do that.
The Express, a lot of those industries.
Those that are there have left the grid.
So.
but let's talk about the fact that the average economic growth that Nigeria has had, especially with this administration, is an average of about 3 something percent, right? Yes. So if we consider that, is that economic growth?
No, it looks like that's like our autopilot mode. Like when we're autopilot, this is what we do. Like
if you're really not doing anything, you have
this is what exactly. That's what it looks like. Because then, if you really want to really move this economy to the next level, we need to be doing 5, 6, 7%.
If not 9.
Yes, because this is the issues we have, right? We are a largely youthful population, 70%, right? And up until now, right, I have not seen any government in recent time, whether at state level or national or federal level, that is coming up with a roadmap for youthful engagement. Employment, productivity. We still don't have that. So if these people are still doing 2% in population growth, and you're not growing faster at a faster rate, at least 3 times this rate, you are not ready yet. And that is basically where we are. So,
you have digital jobs. That's about taxing them. Anyway, I'm just saying.
For me, the question is, let's assume all these policies, all these interventions are not even there. Are we going to be doing worse than 3%? Like you said, it's like more or less the auto mode. So I also feel that we should be doing much more. I actually want to say in Nigeria that we're doing 7.5, 8% economic growth, and because where we are going to is far. There's a difference between somebody that is almost at the finish line, for example, and can afford to stroll into that finish line, and you that are just starting the race. So now we need rapid. See what this guy said, this Burkina Faso president or the ruler. He said they are very urgent in whatever they are doing. He said because the world is in 2025 and they are in 1800. So if we recognize where we are also, we can say there should be a state of emergency on the economic growth.
I don't think Nigeria realizes that the world is in 2025, but maybe we're not there yet. Maybe once we get that memo, we can start to target an average, and not rejoice over 3.4%, but start to target a 6-7%. But we're stabilizing, so that is usually the starting point. Hopefully, we started joining economic growth, but unfortunately, next is election year, so we will see. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for being on the show per usual. And well, I hope you have a full representation of what the WTO DG was saying, because she was saying provide safety nets, now start to grow the economy. So you can't, for administration, you can't cherry pick. You can cherry pick stabilizing the economy and leave the part of growing the economy, creating jobs, and creating safety nets. You have to, put everything together if you're going to run with whatever it is that she said. And that is how we wrap up the Business Lens for today. Thank you for staying with us here on Rapid TV. Do not go anywhere, though. We have the news coming up on the other side of the hour. That is the Rapid TV News. My name is Faith. Thank you once again, guys. Good morning. Nigeria's economy, the global market. What does it all mean for you? From stock market insights to global financial news you need to know. From Wall Street to the Main Street, and of course, the marketplace. Get the answers you need every week on Business Lens with me, Faith Joseph, as I bring into focus the stories, strategies, and shifts shaping our economy.